So one aspect of my Goliath video that I did not cover was the idea of human women being able to bear Nephilim. Now, Goliath is supposedly, depending upon who you're talking to, anywhere from around 6'6" to 10 foot tall. Now, Goliath supposedly came from and had Nephilim blood in him, so that which makes him a giant. But when we go all the way back to the story in Genesis where it talks about Nephilim, is it even possible for a Nephilim to be born? Well, there is one possibility, and that is the only possibility that you could use, and that in itself is still a stretch. But when you look at the Nephilim as described in the book of Enoch, to which your Bible believers don't actually use the book of Enoch, but quite often Enoch is quoted throughout the Bible. Enoch gives a more detailed story talking about the Nephilim and the Watchers. The only thing that you have in your Bible is the fact that it says that the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim, came down to the daughters of men when they saw that they was beautiful and they started having sex with them, which means that angels have ping-pings, and that they began to teach the women that these were great men of renown, and that's it. That's it. That's all your Bible tells you. There are later indicators of Og and Goliath and other Philistines who were considered to be giants, and that they were not worshipers of the Yahweh deity. But it is your stories in the book of Enoch that tells you that the fathers, the B'nai Elohim, started teaching the women how to make weapons and how to make tools, how to use iron, started teaching them the technology, which sounds very Anunnakish, started teaching them how to do these things, the technology of the gods. Some looked at it as magic of the gods. And then once the giants' children, the Nephilim, started to run out of food because of their enormous size, they started to devour men and eat people, and then the people rose up against them. Well, those thought processes are from your book of Enoch. They're not part of your Bible, but yet Christians believe this. But according to the book of Enoch, these giants grew to be about 430 feet tall. Yeah, 430 feet tall. Now, when we look at the people that we know to have been giants in our time, we are looking at people like Andre the Giant, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Andre, who grew to be 7'4", 530, 540 pounds at his max, was born weighing 13 pounds according to his statistics in France. He was 13 pounds. That's a big old baby. Now, if you were to extrapolate a 7'4" man being born at 13 pounds, how much would a baby being born who is going to be a 430-foot person, and how many tons would they weigh being 430 feet? Obviously, the skeletal system of a human couldn't handle that, and that's why Christians will say that, well, they had different biology. That means that that baby, when the woman was carrying that baby, that baby's biology mixed in with the B'nai Elohim's genetics would have been too big for a woman to carry. And some Christians try to say that the women died during childbirth, but how can the women die if they are still having all these Nephilims over and over again, being taught the magic, being taught the technology of the Nephilim? They kept having them. And if the first women are dying, then the next women are not going to keep having babies by the Nephilim. So there's a problem in that. But a woman would not be able to survive the pregnancy, nor would she be able to survive the birth of a Nephilim. The baby would be the size of a grown-ass man coming out of a woman. That's not happening. No human has ever been built in a structure to be able to hold that. The biological history, well, the archaeological history goes 100% against against that, because based on archaeology, most humans were smaller than we are today. So it's impossible for a woman to have had a baby with a B'nai Elohim and that baby comes out a giant. Now, the only thing that Christians have ever said that may slightly work, but incredibly implausible, is the fact that they will say that the babies were born at normal weight, normal length, and then grew into their height. But here's the problem with that. You see, people like Andre the Giant, people like the current tallest man who is like 8 foot, the one Woodlow, whatever his name was in the 1920s, he was 8'11". The only problem with that is each one of them had some type of form of gigantism, acromegalia, something like that, something pushing on their pituitary gland, that then they grew into that giant size. But this was an abnormality that they were suffering from, and their bone structure couldn't handle their weight, and ultimately they all died young, and they all suffered. Andre the Giant was even more of an anomaly because he was able to be athletic, but only for a little while. Once he started getting into his 30s, Andre's body couldn't handle, his bone structure couldn't handle the weight, couldn't handle none of it. So in most cases, they're not able to do this, but we have all kinds of just Nephilim running around. According to the story, 200 of the B'nai Elohim descended on women, and 200 of them were having babies with these women. So we're not looking at 1 or 2 persons here. We're looking at over 200 at least one time around the horn of having a baby. So no, we're not going for that. And to say that their genes were mixed in and they would have been bigger babies, thicker bones, and somebody even tried to go as far as to say, well, look at the bone density between black people and white people, and since the people of that era were people of color, then they would have had different bone density. It doesn't make that much of a difference. It makes a slight difference, but not that much of a difference. And that's probably one of the reasons why Andre was better off. But we look at the Indian guy who's the tallest person right now, and he has to walk around with crutches and he got some brown in him. So skin tone, melanin, is not making your bone density so much greater that you're able to support a 430-foot being that comes out of a human woman. It's just not happening. It's just not going to happen. And she would never be able to carry that baby. That's just not happening. At least in the Anunnaki story, they were smart enough to tell the story to say that the egg, the fertilized egg that came from the human and was infused with Anunnaki DNA of the male, was placed into the womb of Ninharsag, another Anunnaki, who would be able to carry a hybrid baby. At least they were smart enough to write their story to say that the Anunnaki carried what would become the demigods, what would become your Gilgameshes and things of that nature, and not put that on a woman. It is not until you get 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th generation that a woman carries someone with Anunnaki blood in them. The only other time is you have Atrahasis or Utnapishtim, whichever name you want to use, when Enki goes in and have sex with Lamesh's wife. And even that story is a little hard to believe. It's a whole lot hard to believe. So what do you guys think? I think that it's a bunch of legendized stories of just people who happen to be taller than everybody else. Like we would make a legend about Shaquille O'Neal. So what do you guys think? And always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.